This is a 3 to 7 stop variable ND filter, but is it any good for landscape photography? What's up y'all, so Project Photography back with another video, and today this right here is the Freewell 3 to 7 stop variable ND filter V2. And this is a pretty cool variable ND that I've been using a lot for my video in particular. But today I want to test it out for landscape photography. I haven't taken any actual photos with it. And I think here at Crystal Cove is going to be a great place to test out this filter. We have a lot of water here, and I think it makes for some really nice long exposures. And one thing that's kind of interesting too is that I only use regular ND filters. For example, I have a 3 stop, 6 stop, and a 10 stop. I've never actually used variable NDs for my landscape photography. And a big reason for that is that I feel like these variable NDs don't perform that well when it comes to the wide angle side of things. We're talking 16, 14 millimeters. And I just felt the vignetting performance hasn't been good on the variable ND filters that I've tested. So I think this might be a good opportunity to see if this Freewell 3 to 7 stop can change that narrative. And before we start actually shooting some photos with this, I want to talk about more of the physical components of this filter. First of all, it is a magnetic filter, and with it, you get this magnetic filter attachment that you put on top of your lens, and then it's super easy to go ahead and put this filter on and take it off. There's 2 screws on the side here where you can lock it in place, and because you don't actually have to screw this variable ND on, it makes it so much easier to take off the filter or put it on when you need it. And when you have the filter on the lens itself, you can turn the whole thing in order to use a CPL component of it. And in order to use a variable ND component of it, all you have to do is turn this front part of the filter itself, where you can go all the way from 3 stops to 7 stops. I think this system is okay in my opinion, because in order to use the CPL, you actually have to take off these screws and then do the CPL thing and then screw it back on. I don't think it's that intuitive when it comes to the CPL portion of it, but I am pretty happy with how the variable ND component of it is. I think it's pretty easy to use, and for the most part, I'm not really messing with the CPL component. It's really just about the variable ND. And I really like the range that we're getting here in terms of the stops. 3 to 7 stops is a nice range to be able to get those shorter exposures, and the little bit longer ones, around 7 stops is a pretty good number for that. This paired especially with a 10 stop ND filter, I think would make a really good combo if this pans out to be a good filter when it comes to performance and vignetting. And having a filter like this would replace my 3 and 6 stop filters in particular, and those are 2 very important filters in my kit. So this variable ND in 3 to 7 stop covers a very nice range for a lot of landscape photos. And what's cool about this filter is that in the box we essentially get 2 lens caps. One of them goes onto the filter itself and has this nice ring that's really easy to take off and put on. And we also have another cap that goes on top of the magnetic part that you put onto the lens itself, which is nice because I don't have to take off that portion and then put on a lens cap. There's one that's built right into the system. And the last bonus I like about this filter is that it actually is quite small for a variable ND filter. It's really easy to put into my 82 millimeter filter pouch. I have no issue with that in there. It doesn't take up too much space. And in my opinion, this filter is pretty well built. It uses a lot of metal pretty much everywhere. There isn't a part where I see a ton of plastic. So I like the build quality of this and I have no issue with it. So for now, I'm gonna wait until the sun fully goes down. We have about 40 minutes or so, give or take, until that actually happens. And I'm gonna be using my Z6 III plus the 16 millimeter from Viltrox, along with the Z30 and the 28-400. I think it's gonna make a really nice combo and some different looks when it comes to using this filter. So we have about 17-ish minutes until the sun actually sets, and man, it is going down fast. Daylight savings time is absolutely no joke. So we're gonna go ahead and probably shoot a couple up here and then go down there and see what the photos look like. There's some really nice elements down there I think we can mess with, especially as a foreground elements. So I'm gonna go ahead and put you guys on my GoPro so you guys can get a first person point of view as to how I'm catching these photos with the 3 to 7 stop ND filter. We are now behind the scenes behind the camera. And for this first photo, I really want to start with a more of a sweeping landscape, showcasing the entire cliffside on this right-hand side. What was really interesting though is that we have the sun kind of coming in from this left-hand side that was really difficult to deal with. And the ND filter was able to bring us down to about a 4-second exposure, which to me isn't really long enough for these types of exposures. Normally, I'd want to shoot this at around a 20 to 30 second exposure. But of course, because we have the 7-stop ND filter, this was the best that we could get. And as we move on, I kind of wanted to move down to the lower part of the beach. Definitely was not dressed for it, and I definitely didn't plan for it. But there was a lot of interesting elements that I saw down there that I wanted to go ahead and capture. So I pack up my camera gear and start heading down. And it's a pretty far hike down there, and actually there's a lot of people here. The cool thing is though that I have a little bit of time before the sun actually sets, and I want to see what compositions I was able to capture. One thing that's really nice is that shooting away from the sun, you're able to get this nice pink and, you know, like more purple hue type of vibe. And as you can see here with this photo, it looks absolutely stunning. I love the colors, they're nice and soft. I think I did a good job bringing out more of those like blue, softer purple colors in here. And honestly, I'm pretty happy with how the photo came out overall. But one thing that was kind of weird is that on this left-hand side, the ground was more bluish. I'm not sure if that's because of the reflection or because of the ND filter itself. Something I definitely need to look into more with this filter. And I decided to just stay on this side because I actually really liked how the colors looked, especially with that sun going down. I feel like those purples and those pinks just got heightened even more. And I feel like that ground where it was like kind of bluish type of vibe, I have a feeling that that was just a reflection. And as we can see here, I changed up my foreground element a little bit because I really liked how these rocks looked at the bottom part of the frame. I think they did a really nice job contouring the cliffside at the top of the frame and adding a nice foreground element to this photo. And then we go ahead and turn the camera around to the other side because the sun actually came down quite a bit. So I felt like there was a lot of leeway to be able to get some nicer colors without being super overexposed on this side because the sun was pretty harsh that day. So one thing I really want to focus on, I thought was cool, was that by having a variable ND filter, I can essentially go to whatever shutter speed I wanted. Now the sun was down and the light was low, and adjust my ND filter accordingly. And we were able to come out with this photo, which turns edited into this image. We clean up a lot of that vignetting at the bottom right hand part of the corner, and it is pretty significant in this one. And I feel like with this photo in particular, we did a good job cleaning it up. As we can see from the sky, we have those beautiful orange, purple type of hues with some really solid blue colors in there as well. I think this photo for me was kind of what solidified that the image quality on this filter actually looked pretty good overall. That's it for the shoot. Pretty short, only a couple of photos, but to me, I really like this image with the sweeping landscape that we took at the first shot. I think this was really beautiful. And then obviously here with these foreground elements, it looks really nice as well with the softer pink and purple hues. Let me know what was your favorite photo down in the comment section down below. So I just finished shooting my landscapes, and man, I am absolutely soaked. I don't know if you can see that, but my shoes and my pants are just absolutely wet, and I did not dress appropriately for this at all. But I think we actually got some really good photos with this. I mean, just take a look at that sunset behind me. It is absolutely insane. It's straight up gorgeous, and I'm really excited to take a look at the photos. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go back to my studio, and I'm gonna give you guys a rundown of what I think about the image quality when it comes to this 3 to 7 stop. All right, y'all, so we're back from our shoot, and I actually think we got some really good photos. I was quite happy with how the images came out, especially when it came to this filter's performance in particular. And I think I want to first start off with vignetting. And what I wanted to do was compare a lot of the filters that I personally have to the VND. So I took some photos at 3 stops for both filters, and then 6 stops for both filters, and then 1 at the 7 stop, and then 1 with no filter to see how the images actually came out. And some of my findings were really interesting. First of all, when it came to the 3-stop filter side, I found that the VND actually performed better than my individual 3-stop filter. I felt like it was brighter at the edges and overall had much less vignetting. And the 6-stop was a very similar story where again, there was less vignetting with the VND relative to that 6-stop. But one thing that I did notice is that the fall off between the edge of the frame and to the lighter parts of the frame with the VND was much steeper than something like my regular ND filters. And that made it a little bit more difficult to edit in post-production. I tried doing a bunch of my gradient filters that I normally do to mitigate vignetting, but at some point I just said, you know what, we're just gonna remove that spot in the frame using AI generative fill, and actually it did a really good job. So I think from now on, if I'm gonna be using the VND, that's how I'm gonna mitigate some of the vignetting. And with a lot of other variable ND filters, we will get a crosshair effect, where the center of the frame and the horizontal center of the frame will be darker than the rest of the frame, and that's not good at all. That's really difficult to mitigate in post-production, and I'm happy to say that that was not an issue with this variable ND. Of course, I'm only using it in certain lighting scenarios that I had available to me at the time, so it's kind of difficult to see what that actually looks like across a bunch of different lighting scenarios. But in the few photos I took, I didn't really notice it at all, so very happy to report on that front in particular. However, this is something that I will need to do more extensive testing on, such as shooting up at a sky and seeing how that variable ND changes. But for now, I can confidently say that it looks pretty good for the most part. Something else I really want to note is when it comes to sharpness in particular, I didn't see a major drop off when it came to the sharpness of the VND versus without a filter and compared to my regular ND filters, which is a great thing. When it comes to a filter, we don't want to take away any sharpness, and this filter definitely achieves that. The last major thing to point out is with color cast. Now, I didn't do a full test when it came to color cast, but from what I found, the images don't look like they changed very much. I thought the blues look clean, the greens look clean as well, and there wasn't a major sense of this massive color shift from one side to another. So when it comes to this variable ND, I actually think it does a pretty good job overall. And especially when we're testing out ND filters, if we can see as little change from images without a filter to images with that filter, that is absolutely gonna get us the best results. And I think this variable ND does that to an extent. And of course, we do need to do more testing, especially when it comes to the color cast, as well as seeing what that vignetting looks like. So that is something that I need to do more extensive testing on when it comes to this filter. But if we can get a filter that has a 3 to 7 stop in it, and it actually performs well for photography, that might be a pretty viable option, especially paired with that 10 stop ND filter for a lot of photographers that don't want to just get those individual ND filters, or they want to also have that variable ND for video as well. So we need to do more testing on it, but for now, I think it does a pretty good job. But anyways, guys, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for experiencing the world with me today. And let me know what you think about the Freewell 3 to 7 stop ND filter. Would you use this for your landscape photography? Let me know down in the comment section down below. Anyways, guys, please feel free to rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.